Hey, welcome to the line. You know, I didn't get to be an engineer. The only thing I was really good at in math was learning how to sell things and then learning the numbers game of selling. But we have one of the most exciting guests, probably from a technology side, from an engineering side, on the show since its history. Geta, born right out of here in Indiana, is got this bleeding edge technology. I mean, really, like there's the cutting edge, and then there is so far future forward that we don't even know how this technology is going to transform the way we consume, the way we communicate. It's going to transform the way we live. Guys, Eric and Atif, how'd you come up with this Geta box?
So we had an idea about a year ago of doing something called distributed computing.
Okay.
You know, as the internet gets faster and faster, and we realized that the nodes on the internet, your computer, my computer, else's computer, they're not necessarily separated. You can consider them linked as if they were connected with a wire.
Right.
The internet gets that fast that you can actually consume resources of everybody else's computer as if it was your phone.
Right.
So the idea was, how can we monetize that notion of distributed computing?
Right.
So we thought, you have a computer that sits at home and it sits idle most of the time. Say you're at work, it might be connected to the internet. So the CPU cycles on that are just sitting idle.
Right.
They're not really being used. So what if someone who needed those CPU cycles could log into your system, use them, and pay you for that use, and then log off? All done securely without ever touching your hard drive, your operating system, or anything else in your system. And so we envisioned that notion, that concept, and thought we might create something like a USB key that might have a Wi-Fi connection, acquire processes that are sitting on the internet that need to be executed.
Right.
Use your CPU cycles, and then they send the data back.
Right.
That's all you do. And then we said, the configuration of the PCs at home are so variable, and people have different processors, different amounts of memory. We really can't control what we're going to get.
Right.
So we said, why don't we just build our own box that does that? And that's where this sort of idea came about. And we wanted something very cheap, very powerful, and that could link to the internet, consume these processes, execute them, and send the data back, and do it, seamlessly, so that the user doesn't have to do any intervention. And while it's sitting there, the user's making money on it.
And Atif, I think I want to point one thing out. Like, what is so important is you set out to solve one problem, right? And what ended up happening is you gestated and created something that created a whole new value set. I mean, isn't that right? I mean, I've got some buddies that have been, that went out to solve one problem, and they ended up leveraging, the A3 platform with Amazon and being able to use all that computing process to go after big data. And you guys went off this way, and then you ended up here, and here is pretty dynamic and incredible. Talk to me about where you ended up.
So basically, this platform that we thought would be a black box just grew and grew in terms of its capability. We looked at the next generation chips. We thought, what if this platform was mobile? Instead of sitting at home, what if the user was carrying it with them, walking around with it, and using the same capability, in a Wi-Fi or wireless fashion? It could be taken into work. It shouldn't have to sit at home. It could be using it at work,
right?
And it would still be able to kind of farm these processes out. So the idea just sort of snowballed from there, and we created a box that we now feel can be embedded into any industrial or embedded systems environment and basically take over the functions of that environment. So what we've created is a really powerful next generation black box, really, that has the compute capability that will put servers to shame.
Right.
What we're doing is imagine, taking Amazon server farm, blowing it up into 1 million pieces, giving each piece to the consumer.
Right.
So we call this consumer-oriented cloud computing. That's what we're actually creating.
Wow.
And the idea is you're built for the future. As the internet gets faster and faster and faster, these black boxes are all going to be one giant computer.
Right.
So in all honesty, you have petaflops of computing power at your fingertips with these boxes. If you buy a box today, it's not available today, but when it does become available, if you buy that box, you have instant access to everybody else's box securely.
Right.
Because we have hardware in there that is only used by internet processes that you, as an owner of the box, can't touch. it's physically separated from the rest of the system. So, the boxes can automatically connect themselves to every other box, and each of the boxes knows where every other box is located, how close they are, how far away, and what processing capability is available to them, and they can farm these processes out anywhere our resources available, and execute those resources and return the results to you.
Now, Teef, let me just stop you for a second, because I understand the engineering capabilities of what you're creating, but let's translate that for Homer Simpson for a second, right? What does that actually mean to me? Because that's your product. You're giving people this ability that cell phones have transformed the way we are consuming data and information and communicating, right? Because the evolution of having that computing processing power in your hand, right? But this is that next generation. This is really the distributed network in a wireless platform, and allowing people to use each other's processing power to consume information in a different way. And for Homer Simpson, let's talk through some of the, give me 2 what-if scenarios that really speak to what does all that stuff do.
So, for example, here's an application that would be phenomenal for this. Mm-hmm. So imagine you're traveling in another country, mm-hmm. and you're, say, in Europe somewhere, in the middle of, say, some country there, and you don't speak the language.
Right.
You could be carrying these boxes with you, and it could be a one-stop mobile real-time translator.
Right.
As you're speaking in your language, it's speaking out in the language of that current GPS coordinate.
Right.
So wherever you happen to be, it'll know what the GPS coordinate is, and it'll know what language is spoken. Mm-hmm. It'll translate for you in real time. So there's no more language barrier.
Right.
So where you happen to be, it will be able to translate in that language. And you can speak in your language, whatever language that happens to be, and it'll translate it back into some language.
And just think about let's just take that instant right there. So how that can change our worldwide experience. So you go and you spend the summer in France, and instead of getting your fingers in and learning, 1/10 of the language, or even really getting a working knowledge of how to speak French, you could walk home speaking full-blown French, because of the way that technologies is disrupted the way we're communicating, and forcing us in the real time to really experience and immerse ourselves in the language, which is really what it takes to learn a language, right? I mean, that's the dynamic leap forward we can make in changing how we communicate. Am I crazy there?
Absolutely. Not only that, but it could teach you what you're saying wrong, or you correct your grammar, or correct your spelling, or whatever happens to be. It could be your personal assistant for teaching you a new language as you're in that space. Mm-hmm. And then as you're walking around, for example, wearing, say, virtual reality glasses, or these augmented reality glasses, say you're in that same country in a different place, you want to go sightseeing, and as you're walking down the street, you can point to an object, and they tell you the name of the object right in your glasses.
Right.
So it uses gesture recognition to locate objects in space and in time, and it will tell you exactly what they are. And you can say, okay, now show me what that building looked like 20 years ago. And it'll superimpose an image of the building on your field of view as it looked like 20 years ago. So people that are historians, or architects, or archaeologists, or anybody else with interest, you can kind of go back in time almost.
And I think the other powerful thing is the way the club, or the network of the people who consume the product, could really elevate the thinking and learning of everybody else in there, because you're in a closed distributed network, right? I mean, you're going to network with each other, which is the bigger the network gets, the more valuable it becomes. Am I crazy on that, or is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So that's now. So here's what I want our listeners to hear. You took really technology that was available, and not only you because of the advanced way you thought about it, right? Like the advanced way, like Einstein said that you can never solve a problem with the level of thinking that it was created in, right? You elevated the thinking, you went to a different level, and you applied a lot of things that are out here in a completely different model. And your hope is to revolutionize the way people consume. Am I correct?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
And with that, you've started a Kickstarter campaign, right?
That's right. It's not started yet. We've done the filming, so probably in about 2 weeks we'll have it launched.
Right.
But we'll be there very soon.
And so we're gonna give you a shout out and make sure we email this to everybody that's following the line, so we can help you get the push out on that. But really, I mean, that's just one example of like this distributed networking, taking the power of the Amazon server farm and then democratizing it for the user, the average user, and allowing that network, the ability for someone to leverage Perkins' Law, right? The value of the network, the bigger a network gets. I mean, that's what you're coming to market with. That's what's really powerful about Get a Box. Am I crazy?
Absolutely. The other thing, as you said, when you buy a box, it just gets faster and faster with time. Imagine that. I mean, your computer usually gets slower and slower with time because the applications that are running on it are getting more and more complicated, and you have to upgrade. So, we live in this sort of consumer era where every year we have new devices coming out, new upgrades, new patches to existing things. And these are just band-aids for technology that, can actually be much more powerful and more superior. And that's what we're trying to create. We're trying to create a system that evolves itself.
Right.
You don't necessarily need to upgrade both the hardware and the software. And it just gets better with time.
It's a reverse way of thinking about this whole paradigm. It is a new paradigm, really. So let me change gears on you guys. You know what? We're running out of time here. What is your why? Because the tagline of our company is "Lead with Why," right? Lead with your why. Find out your passion. Follow that. Eric, what is your why? What got you into this game? What has been the driving force, your passion behind making this real?
Well, I mean, Atif is pretty much brought me into the game with his expertise in engineering. The big why for me on my end, but there's a lot of whys. The big why is to come up with something that's extremely small and very, very powerful and very low wattage. That we can actually take new technologies and what we've been talking about, the future of technologies, and not only create an environment and for us as a company at Geta, but also for other companies. What people are going to do with this box is going to be more amazing than what we're creating. Just like Microsoft Windows did. But for example, the why was to change the game, to try to the old saying goes that everything is impossible until somebody does it. So when I met Atif, it started with one idea, but it spring into so many other things, and it's still growing to this day.
Right.
It's like he said, it's from an engineering standpoint. I mean, we just went to SIGGRAPH in Vancouver, and we're talking to Oculus Rift, and Oculus Rift is a major company, a major breakthrough in virtual reality.
Right.
And we're talking to them, and their goggles are attached to a huge desktop, and we're talking to them about what we're creating and how small and how low wattage it is. It's actually so powerful and so small that they can just get rid of the desktop and they can actually embed this into the glasses themselves.
Be powerful.
Yeah.
Atif, sorry, Eric, Atif, what is your why?
I think I wanted to create a platform that I could basically experiment with. I wanted to create a platform where we can design hardware, where we can design software, really for next generation experiences. And the desktops and the mobile environments are all going to go away.
Right.
What you're going to have is augmented reality. That's really the next generation. And all our experiences in the next 10 years, are going to evolve towards that. And so we wanted to be, to lead the way with creating a platform that can actually do augmented reality.
Right.
That's where my passion comes in.
I think what Eric said and what you said is so poignant. And I just want to wrap up with this. Like, building a platform where you're amazed about what people can do with what you've built is one of the most amazing things about technology. And what I find, what really excites me about working with engineers and guys like you is, when you take somebody that's been working their whole life a mile deep and an inch wide on something to become the best expert, and you bridge that together with somebody else, the dynamics of what those two things can create together change the way the world works. And I think you're exactly right. Building a platform where you're going to be amazed to see what people are doing with your stuff is what is just going to really excites us about Get a Box, and happy to get you the word out there for you guys. So thanks for being on the show, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Thank you for having us.